It's 10 o'clock. This is Sky News at 10. Our top story. A worst-case scenario. The NHS warns the health service is battling a deepening flu crisis as hospital cases rise by more than 50% in a week. The United States imposes sanctions on 6 more ships and 3 nephews of Venezuela's president following the seizure of an oil tanker.
The president is committed to stopping the illegal flow of drugs into our country. He's also fully committed to effectuating this administration's sanction policy, and that's what you saw and the world saw take place yesterday.
Venezuela has already been invaded, a claim from the country's opposition leader as she emerges from months in hiding. Profoundly depressing allegations. Nigel Farage's former school responds to claims he made racist comments as a student. A former army commander who trialled new armoured vehicles tells Sky News they left soldiers sick and suffering hearing loss. Plus, a skydiver's harrowing ordeal as his parachute becomes wrapped around a plane wing.
Are you going to
Some tough questions for the Queen as she hosts a Christmas tea party for children at Clarence House. And we'll take a first look at tomorrow's front pages in our press preview from 10:30 right through to midnight. Good evening. Winter has barely begun, but tonight we've had a warning that the NHS is facing a worst-case scenario, December with a surge of superflu. Latest figures show the number of people in hospital in England with flu remains at a record level for this time of year and has increased by 55% in the past week. Health bosses say there's no peak in sight. The surge is being driven by a new strain of the virus and has led to calls from some for those with symptoms to wear masks. Here's our science correspondent, Thomas Moore.
It's been called the Flunami, a wave of flu cases that's come 5 weeks earlier than normal, caused by a mutated virus called subclade K. Latest NHS statistics show an average of 2,660 beds were occupied by patients with flu each day last week in England, enough to fill 3 big hospitals. It's a 55% rise from the week before, and the NHS says it's facing a worst-case scenario for the time of year. Most of the cases at the moment are caused by the H3N2 strain of flu. It tends to cause more severe symptoms, particularly in the elderly. There's a version of the strain in this year's vaccine, and there are 2 other flu strains there too. But the decision on exactly which versions of the flu go into the jab is taken in the spring to give manufacturers enough time to make millions of doses in time for the Northern Hemisphere winter. But the H3N2 virus evolved significantly this summer to become subclade K. The 7 new mutations help it evade the immunity the population has built up from previous infections or vaccinations, so it's spreading rapidly. In a typical year, every 100 people with flu would pass the virus on to 120 others. This year, it's estimated to be 140. But the UK Health Security Agency says it's still 30 to 40% effective at preventing hospital admissions in adults. As for masks, well, the NHS's most senior emergency doctor says that's up to you.
I think at the moment what we're saying to everyone is to be sensible and pragmatic. So if you are symptomatic or if you are vulnerable, you may well want to wear a face mask, especially when you're out and about, and that would be a sensible thing to do.
So how bad could this be? Well, GP consultation rates have been used to track flu for decades. At the moment, they are still well short of the peak reached in the winter of 2017-2018, when there were just over 22,000 excess deaths attributed to flu. The last epidemic was 36 years ago, when more than 1 million people were infected by Christmas. Then there were around 26,000 excess deaths. But even though infection rates are still only classified as moderate, cases are rising steeply, just as resident doctors prepare to strike next week. The Prime Minister urged the Doctors' Union to accept a new offer.
That offer can only go forward if they don't take strike action, particularly in the run-up to Christmas, particularly when we've got a problem with flu. It would be irresponsible of BMA to push through.
This outbreak and the likely impact on the NHS could have some way to go.
The US Treasury has imposed sanctions on 6 more ships and on 3 nephews of Venezuela's president following the seizure of an oil tanker yesterday. The White House press secretary told reporters tonight the tanker will be taken to a US port where its cargo of oil will be seized through a formal legal process. Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt says President Trump isn't interested in a conflict with Venezuela, but wants to see an end to illegal drugs being trafficked into the United States. Our US correspondent David Blevins reports.
They swooped as dawn broke, US forces landing on the deck of an oil tanker. They claimed the vessel, named the skipper, was funding foreign terrorism by transporting sanctioned oil. Venezuela called it international piracy. Not so, says the White House, defending the audacious raid.
The Department of Justice requested and was approved for a warrant to seize a vessel because it's a sanctioned shadow vessel known for carrying black market sanctioned oil to the IRGC, which you know is a sanctioned entity. So the president is committed to stopping the illegal flow of drugs into our country. He's also fully committed to effectuating this administration's sanction policy.
There's a huge US presence in the region. Warships, a nuclear submarine and F-35 jets. All designed, it seems, to put pressure on Venezuela's president. But Nicolas Maduro doesn't look or sound like a man under pressure. His government, defiant.
Lo que ellos quieren es robarse nuestro petróleo.
What they want is to steal our oil, to steal our gold. They want to steal our gas. They want to steal our water because they don't want to pay. And why don't they pay for it? Because they are thieves. They're accustomed to that.
The US has bombed more than 20 boats, killing nearly 90 people, framing it as an operation against drug traffickers. But the interception of this tanker could have wider implications, and the Trump administration is facing questions on Capitol Hill.
Just the drugs that the Coast Guard has been able to interdict on the waters since that President Trump has been in office has been enough lethal doses of cocaine to kill 177 million Americans. That's 2/3 of our country.
The seizure of this oil tanker casts fresh doubt on President Trump's stated reason for the boat strikes and military build-up. One Democratic senator says it's a big lie and that this development is evidence that this is really about regime change. It has certainly upped the ante, striking images of armed troops descending from Nighthawk helicopters, bearing the hallmarks of a precursor to further military intervention. David Blevins, Sky News in Washington.
Well, Venezuela is home to the world's largest proven oil reserves, with an estimated 303 billion barrels, though it only produces about 1 million barrels a day. And there's one big reason why America is so interested, as our data and economics editor Ed Conway explains.
Now, on the surface, Donald Trump says that his interest in Venezuela is all about drugs. But what if it's actually not about the smuggling of illegal drugs out of Venezuela, but what if it's maybe in part about oil? Now, on the surface, you might be thinking to yourself, really, does America actually need oil from anyone else? After all, look, a few years ago, this is how global production, various different countries looked. And America was kind of in the middle there, well below Saudi. Venezuela wasn't that far below America. So you might have thought that's a reasonable question a few years ago. But now, look at what's happened since. So thanks to the shale revolution, American oil output has basically gone through the roof. It's gone through the roof. And here's what's interesting about this, OK? You might have thought, looking at where Venezuela is, that, who cares? It's so small, a tiny little piddling output. Why should America care about Venezuelan crude? It comes back to the fact that crude oil, when we talk about crude oil, actually, it's lots of different things depending on where you are in the world. Now, in some parts of the world, when you kind of have that oil gushing out of the ground, it comes out of the ground looking a little bit like this. This is known as medium crude. OK, so medium crude, it's the stuff that's pretty viscous, but it's quite dark. But in some parts of the world, when it comes out of the ground, it looks almost more like a smoothie. You can see there, that's kind of green. That's still crude oil, but it's just a different type of crude oil. That's known as light crude. And sometimes, actually, it can be clear. And in other parts of the world, it comes out of the ground like this, heavy, gloopy stuff. That's known as heavy oil. OK? And here's what you need to know. In America, most of the refineries are set up to deal with this stuff, heavy oil. But most of the production in America is this stuff, the light stuff. Now, this is American production, just broken down by the type of oil. We don't normally look at this, but in this case, it's interesting. And in recent years, that's 2015, but just over the past decade, look at that light crude oil bar. That's higher and higher. Not much heavy stuff being produced in America. So because the refineries need that stuff, it needs to get it from somewhere. And so where's it getting it from? Well, look, this is showing you imports from around the world. And you can see that heavy imports, so heavy oil imports into America, have gone up from 12% in the 1970s through to 70% in 2025. And that oil, where do you get heavy oil from? Have a look at this. This is showing you the biggest countries, the biggest producers in the world of heavy oil. There's some stuff in Mexico, but look, basically, it's Russia, it's Canada, and lo and behold, it's Venezuela. This is where the heavy oil that American refineries actually need is. And if you look at where those imports in America come from, so America still needs that oil, even though it's producing lots of its own, that stuff has to go somewhere overseas. It's mostly, look, it's risen. Canada has risen from 15% in 2000 of all the imports to 61% of American imports in 2024. And if you're Donald Trump and you're thinking, I want to be less dependent on Canada, then you might well look towards this purple slice here. Because although that's really small, total reserves in the ground in Venezuela are actually higher than anywhere else on the planet. And so if you can free that up, all that heavy oil, then that might be quite consequential for the US economy.
It's a mission that reads like the plot of a Hollywood blockbuster, involving a network of activists, a disguise, a trip on a fishing boat, and then a private jet. That's what Venezuela's opposition leader, Maria Corina Machado, went through to arrive in Norway under the cover of darkness to accept her Nobel Peace Prize. She was given the award for her efforts to challenge the authoritarian government of President Nicolás Maduro and vowed that her country will soon be democratic and free. Our Europe correspondent Alistair Bunkle reports from Oslo.
Maria Corina Machado eventually arrived in Oslo in the early hours of Thursday morning. She greeted supporters from her hotel balcony and then went onto the streets to meet them. Her journey here was extraordinary and dangerous. We don't know most of the details, although it's believed she was smuggled out by fishing boat and in disguise to the Caribbean island of Curacao and then by private jet to Norway. However, she has now confirmed that she did it with American help.
I cannot give details because these are people that could be harmed. Certainly the regime would have done everything to prevent me from coming. They did not know where I was in hiding in Venezuela, so it was hard for them to stop me. It was rude, nonetheless. And yes, we did get support from the United States government.
Hours before she arrived, US troops boarded and intercepted a Venezuelan tanker. The White House said that it was illegally carrying oil to Iran. Venezuela's president, Nicolás Maduro, angrily criticised it as piracy. Machado was asked repeatedly in Oslo whether she would support US military action to get rid of Maduro and how closely she is cooperating with the United States. She gave carefully worded answers.
President Trump has said that Nicolás Maduro's days are numbered. You've spoken about the people of Venezuela returning home very soon. What level of coordination is going on between yourself and the US administration about the day after Maduro goes, the weeks after?
We have been working hard, not only with the US government, but other governments in Latin America and Europe in terms of explaining in detail how we are prepared for the first 100 hours and the next 100 days in a country that has a multidimensional crisis. I want to assure you that very talented, experienced, and honest professionals within Venezuela and abroad are working together, and we have the plans and teams ready to take control on day one.
Machado says that she now wants to spend time with her family, who she hasn't seen for 2 years, and go to a doctor, which she hasn't been able to do in hiding for over a year. But she insists that she will return to Venezuela when the time is right, whether or not Maduro is still in power. It will be another dangerous journey home. Alistair Bunkle, Sky News, in Oslo.
Dulwich College says allegations that Nigel Farage made racist and anti-Semitic comments to fellow pupils at the school are profoundly distressing, according to a letter obtained by Sky News. The Reform UK leader has faced allegations he engaged in racist and anti-Semitic behaviour while he was a pupil at the top private school in South London almost 50 years ago. Well, let's cross live now to Westminster. Our chief political correspondent John Craig. And John, this story refuses to go away.
This is all about a letter from Robert Milne. Now, he is the headmaster of Dulwich College, and the letter is in reply to correspondence from Jean-Pierre Lehoux. Now, he is a Jewish former pupil of Dulwich College who wrote to Mr. Milne, the master, following an interview he gave to Sky News last weekend when he said that Nigel Farage sang anti-Semitic songs to Jewish pupils and had a big issue, he said, with anyone called Patel. In his letter, Mr. Milne says, allegations of racist and anti-Semitic conduct are profoundly distressing, and it's important to say clearly that such behaviour is wholly incompatible with the values the college holds. He says what we can unequivocally state is that the behaviours described are entirely at odds with the Dulwich College of today. And of course these allegations relate to when Mr. Farage was a pupil there back in the 1970s. Now, Mr. Farage has told Sky News, I have not met or spoken to this master, so I'm surprised by his uninformed comments in response to claims from nearly 50 years ago from politically motivated actors. If he's interested, I can show him the many messages that I've received from fellow pupils, including Jewish ones, that entirely contradict these allegations. Now, a week ago, at a very combative news conference, Mr. Farage did indeed read out a letter from a Jewish pupil at the time, and that pupil didn't name him, but he said the letter said there was plenty of macho, tongue-in-cheek schoolboy banter. It was humour, and yes, sometimes it was offensive. He said, but never with malice. That's a letter Mr. Farage read out from a Jewish pupil. Now, a Reform spokesman has added that this is a witch hunt, merely an attempt to discredit Reform and Nigel Farage. And the spokesman has hit out at the left-wing media and deeply unpopular Labour Party, using 50-year-old smears as a last act of desperation. The British public will see right through it. But these allegations keep coming. It's the first time we've heard from the college, though, and clearly Mr. Milne is admitting that this whole saga has caused Dulwich College quite some embarrassment.
OK, John, thank you. The former commander of a unit tasked with trialling the British Army's new Ajax armoured fighting vehicle 6 years ago has told Sky News he repeatedly raised the alarm about noise and vibration problems at the time. Rob Page says he damaged his hearing and suspects the vehicles could be to blame. Dozens more troops were hurt last month while using the Ajax, barely a fortnight after they were declared finally ready for operations. Our Security and Defence editor, Deborah Haynes, has the story.
The Ajax armoured fighting vehicle is years late, billions over budget, and plagued by noise and vibrations that have injured soldiers. Dozens fell unwell last month, barely a fortnight after the vehicle was finally declared ready for service. Now all use has been paused while checks are carried out. A sense of déjà vu for Rob Page, who commanded the army unit that trialled the £10 million vehicle when soldiers were first harmed 6 years ago, himself included. It's the first time he's spoken publicly.
So when the trial started immediately in 2019, the soldiers started to feel some aspect of vibration effect. Hands, wrists, knees, feet, that type of pain.
When did you first become aware of the concern about hearing injury?
So from March 2020 through to the end of that year.
The former army officer says the manufacturer, General Dynamics, had set what were meant to be safe times and speeds to operate the vehicle. But soldiers kept being hurt, so he raised the alarm.
We've got a vibration hazard, we've got a noise hazard. We can't quite quantify both, but we know they're there. And our solution is to mitigate that with time in the vehicle, exposure, and speed hopefully bring the vibration down. And for me, this felt like it wasn't yet a precise science, and that was what I was flagging constantly.
The trials were stopped at the end of 2020 and in 2021, but the damage had already been done.
And how much of your hearing have you lost?
I've lost about 20% of my hearing, but it's really the tinnitus that's more frustrating.
He doesn't know if Ajax is to blame, but has his suspicions.
It's one of our core senses, and losing it is a permanent disability. And that, for me, is really the sort of tragedy that's come out of some of this.
The other tragedy, though, is the same problems have emerged yet again, leaving the army without new armour until, or unless, the Ajax faults can finally be fixed. General Dynamics UK says soldier safety is its highest priority. In a statement, it said, since 2019, we've worked with the British Army and the Ministry of Defence to conduct extensive testing and trials. Vehicle enhancements and headset changes have been implemented since issues were first identified more than 5 years ago. Ajax now holds the most comprehensive safety case of any armoured platform worldwide. This is one of the most tested combat vehicles ever produced. The Ministry of Defence said it will always put the safety of our personnel first, and it takes any allegations very seriously and will look closely at any evidence provided. Deborah Haynes, Sky News.
3 men have been jailed for the murder of a grandfather at his home in County Durham. A warning, there are some pictures coming up that you may find distressing. 60-year-old Barry Dawson was shot dead through the window of his living room in broad daylight in April after a brick was thrown first to break the window. Thomas Sterling, Kelvin Lawson and Sean Ray were all jailed for life for his murder, with Sean Ray also sentenced for the possession of a prohibited firearm. Mr. Dawson was not the intended target of the shooting and was described as entirely innocent during the trial. Ukraine's president says negotiators are wrestling over territory, including the future of the eastern Donetsk region, in US-led peace talks on ending the war with Russia. Volodymyr Zelensky revealed details of the discussions before joining a video link with European allies who make up the coalition of the willing. They're trying to steer the US negotiations, as NATO chief Mark Rutte warned today that Europe could be Russia's next target. Artefacts with significant cultural value have been stolen from Bristol Museum's British Empire and Commonwealth collection. Avon and Somerset police have released images of 4 men suspected of breaking in during the early hours of 25th of September. About 600 items were taken, including ivory, bronze figurines and geographical specimens. The Commons has been told that Swale Borough councillors in Kent were violently intimidated during a debate about becoming a district of sanctuary for asylum seekers. The Labour MP, Kevin McKenna, whose constituency covers the Swale area, told the Commons that men in balaclavas vandalised council offices and threw eggs. The sanctuary motion was voted down. In excess of 200,000 people are estimated to be overstaying their visas right now in the UK. It's an estimated figure because the government can't say exactly how many there are. No data has been collated for more than 5 years. Our communities correspondent Lisa Holland spoke to some overstayers who told her why they fear going home.
This is Kingsbury in northwest London. Locals say the area has been transformed over the past 5 years as post-Brexit visa opportunities opened up for people coming from South Asia.
It looks like as if you're walking through mini Mumbai.
We've arranged to meet someone who lives in the community and helps with events here. He doesn't want to be identified, but raises serious concerns about visa abuse.
They just come with one thing in mind, overstay and work in cash.
And he claims economic migrants are regularly arriving who've paid strangers to pretend they're a friend or relative in order to obtain a visitor visa to get to Britain.
I come across so many people who has come this way into this country.
You think it's widespread, a stranger sponsoring a stranger?
It's a widespread, yeah. When I talk to these people, they literally tell me, oh, someone is coming tomorrow, day after tomorrow, someone coming. I said, what happens if you get caught? They're laughing at us because they know Britain is a soft country.
Multiple community leaders and lawyers have told Sky News of their concerns about the number of people overstaying visas.
At this time, there's definitely in excess of about 200,000 people overstaying in the UK. It might even be closer to 3. It could even be 400,000. The Home Office doesn't have any accurate data because we don't have any exit controls.
What do you think about that?
Well, it's a shambles. It's an institution where every wall in the building is cracked.
So why is your hand shaking?
Many, like Anike, have for years lived in fear of the Home Office, but something has changed. She came to the UK on a 3-month visitor visa from Nigeria when her sister Esther was diagnosed with a brain tumour. Esther says her sister is her full-time carer, which means Anike has now overstayed her visa for 12 years.
When you hear Nigel Farage talking about sending hundreds of thousands, potentially, of people back to their country of birth, what impact does that have on you?
It does make me worry. Everybody is thinking what will become of people like us.
Others disappear within their communities. We're calling this man Ramesh. We meet at a Gurdwara, a Sikh place of worship, where he's come to pray and be fed. Ramesh says he came to the UK just over 2 years ago on a student visa which was cancelled when he stopped going to university after he was involved in a bad accident. He insists he can't return to India because of his political activism.
There are a lot of Pakistani peoples is help to me to give work in his house for cleaning and for householding things, yeah.
And it's all cash in hand?
Yeah, all is cash in hand.
Which you know is illegal in Britain?
Yeah, I know it's illegal in Britain, but I don't have any another option to manage my financial situation.
In response, a Home Office spokesperson said, "We will not tolerate any abuse of our immigration system, and anyone found to be breaking the rules will be liable to have enforcement action taken against them." In the first year of this government, we have returned 35,000 people with no right to be here. Arrests and raids for illegal working have soared to their highest levels since records began. Lisa Holland, Sky News.
Shocking footage has emerged of a parachute jump that went wrong in Queensland, Australia. 16 skydivers were preparing for a formation jump at 15,000 feet when one of their reserve parachutes accidentally deployed and became stuck on the tail of the plane. The skydiver used a knife to cut the tangle lines before they managed to pull their main chute, eventually landing safely with only minor injuries.
As a result, the roller door remained open during the descent, increasing the ease with which the pilot could have exited the aircraft if they needed to. And although not mandatory at the time of the accident, the parachutists had a hook knife attached to their chest strap, enabling them to cut enough reserve parachute lines for the parachute to tear free of the tailplane.
The Queen has hosted her annual tea party for children at Clarence House. Her Majesty faced a tough question as she greeted one inquisitive guest. Children being supported by charities had the chance to decorate a tree, enjoy a Christmas meal and receive presents from Father Christmas. This year invites were extended to young people from Roald Dahl's Marvellous Children's Charity and Helen and Douglas House. Well, that was Sky News at 10. Coming up, we'll take a first look at tomorrow's newspapers in the press preview. Tonight, we're joined by the editor of the Courier in Dundee, David Clegg, and the Telegraph's senior political commentator and columnist, Annabel Denham. Amongst the stories we'll be discussing, this on the front of The Guardian, UK facing worst winter flu crisis. Well, let's update you on that as soon as we come back. Do stay with us.